Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Nursing Uncharted. This year, I've had a focus on just overall health for nurses. We've talked about mental health, and now it's really time to get into the physical health. And something I think that nurses struggle with is what we eat and all of our treats that families and patients bring us in the break room. And I have met our next guest. I work with her on the daily, and I feel like she's going to bring some insight to how we can dial in our nutrition while we're at work. So please welcome Sydney Navarro. She is a certified dietitian, and she is my certified dietitian. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Anne. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here and be able to share some of the things with everybody that I've gotten to share with you.
Yes. And you have helped me tremendously. I think we've been working together for almost
Love
a
to hear
year
that.
now, I
Yeah.
think.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up on
Yeah.
the year mark. If not, we've already
Yeah.
surpassed that. But yeah. So how I start this podcast with everyone, nurses, whoever I have come on here, is really to talk about, your passion and like what you really would love to get across to the viewers. So if you want to, maybe give a little bit of a bio about yourself,
Mhm.
I've already introduced that you're a certified dietitian, but maybe how you got into that and, really what keeps you going.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from New Jersey. I came out to California to San Diego chasing that beautiful weather for school. So I went to San Diego State, graduated with my bachelor's from there, and then went on to Cal Poly SLO to do my dietetic internship. And then from there, did all the things, and here I am today as a registered dietitian. That is how I got to, kind of where I am today. Some of my passions, I like to emphasize with all of my clients that I work with is fostering that healthy relationship with food. I like to take away that restrictive mindset and create more habits that are kind of more sustainable for the future and making people feel empowered and motivated. And I always want my clients walking away saying, okay, like I can do this, and we want it to be something that we can get excited talking about. We can get excited talking about food and recipes and meal prep. And um, it doesn't have to be scary. I want to, like take
Yeah.
that a way for people and show them that balance is completely manageable. Like I am the one of the biggest foodies out there, so I'm looking to include all the things, of course, having that balanced lifestyle. Um, I'm also a group fitness instructor, so one of my big passions is just motivating people to move their body. I moving to the beat of the music, feeling strong in their body, even challenging themselves physically. I love that aspect. So that's kind of like my side passion that I
Yeah.
kind of get to let off all of my, like people call me a, what did someone call me the other day? A firecracker. So I let my
Yeah.
firecracker out and then I can be the
Yes.
registered dietitian after that.
Well,
So yeah.
that's what drew me to you. I mean, obviously we go to the same gym, the same fitness center, and I met you in one of the classes you were teaching, and then you kind of plugged, your hey, see me for,
Hmm.
nutrition training and just
Yeah.
some guidance. And at that time, I was really struggling.
Hmm.
I do love fitness. I love going to the gym. It's good for your health. It's good, for your mental health, physical health, all the things. It's therapy, it's everything. So, it really helped me meeting with you to kind of look at food and look at your I don't like the word diet, but like,
Right.
diet in the sense of
Yeah.
what you're eating. Um and it just helped to like really shift my mindset
Hmm.
versus, restricting, okay, I can only eat this or like this, like only go to
Right.
healthy things. It just kind of changed the mindset. And I think that that is something that nurses struggle with. As I said, the treats in the break room and, even the past couple of days have been stressful. I haven't been feeling the best. And my comfort is to go to unhealthy food choices.
Yes.
But, I know when I'm doing that, okay, I need it today, but the
Yeah.
rest of the week we're going to shift and we're not going to do that. So I think that if I'm feeling this way, I hear my colleagues talking about this. I
For
think it's
sure.
good to have like for this conversation and this episode to get out there because I'm sure a lot of nurses feel that struggle and it's what we consume is how we feel and I think that how when you showed me the right things to eat, I
Yeah.
felt better physically and it gave me
Oh,
more
yeah.
energy to get through the day. So I'm excited to dive in with you
Yes.
and
That makes me
and kind
so
of get
happy to
started.
hear. That makes me
Well,
so happy
good.
to hear. That was my goal, so we're
Yes,
good.
yes. Well, and I'm trying to, pay it forward and share some insight, but obviously you're going to be the one to describe that and explain it a lot better
Yeah.
than I can. So, I think starting this out is, what is the biggest piece of advice that you can give to
Mhm.
nurses out there?
Yeah. This is a big one for nurses and for all people alike, especially for nurses with the scheduling of your job, is setting yourself up for success. That is hands down my number one advice. Having the tools in your tool belt, tools being, your ingredients, your food, your healthy snacks. Um, so setting yourself up for success. And that means is, doing the grocery shop, doing a little bit of the meal prep, taking 10 minutes to grab a sheet of paper and say, this is gonna be what I eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the planning, where it can seem very overwhelming at first, like planning, like, "Oh, it's another thing I have to worry about," right? At the end of the day, we get decision fatigue. We don't wanna make another decision. But that's when having the tools in your tool belt, that last decision of, "Okay, it's the end of the day, what do I have for dinner?" It's gonna be so much easier to make that healthier decision if you have your tools in your tool belt. Um, I always say that, planning and meal prepping and grocery shopping, it is really the ultimate form of self-care. Like, that's the best that way that you can make yourself feel good is to make yourself feel powerful. Like I said before, like, I have the tools, I have the ingredients, I know what I'm gonna eat, and I know that I'm going to feel good. You always feel better when you know that you're putting good fuel in your body to keep you going, so
You do feel better. Like, yes, okay, you're gonna hate me because I haven't told you this yet, but the past 2 days, like I haven't been feeling well. Work's been stressful.
yeah, and
My
that
my
happens. It's life.
yeah, yeah, and my guilty pleasure is Coca-Cola. Like, and I think you
Mhm.
know that. And the hospital that I work at, they used to not have regular sodas. You used to only have like diet. So then that would keep me away. But for some
Yeah.
reason lately, they've snuck in some regular Coke
Oh,
and
how sneaky little devils.
I know. So it's been like I've had a Coke, I ate some Doritos, like I've been eating really bad junk food, but I feel not good. Like I can feel just like, ugh, like this isn't good food. This isn't gonna get
Mhm.
me through my 12-hour shift. So, that's when you say feeling good and people are like, well, yeah, I feel good after I eat my favorite snack. But
Right.
when you're at work, it's so different because
Yeah,
you're on your feet for 12 hours and those nutrients that you consume have to get you through your day.
absolutely, and not even get too scientific here, but, the actual effect that the foods that you would meal prep or grocery shop for yourself have on your brain, on your blood sugar, all of those things affect how you can focus, affect how you have energy throughout the day, affect how long you can stay on your feet, or, all of those things, your decision making, your focus, all of that. So it's not just feeling good. There's a reason. It's because they're literally your brain is using this food to do your job. And I think
Yeah.
that that's why it's the ultimate form of self-care. Just putting yourself in the best position to feel good and do the amazing things that nurses do.
Yeah, and I think when you say get too scientific, I mean, we're nurses majority of the time or
Right.
who's listening to this podcast, so we're gonna eat that up. So
Yeah,
I'm glad you plugged that because
perfect. Good.
that's where our mindset goes. We're science driven and,
Amazing.
if you understand why things happen, I know for me that's my biggest thing is why do I feel this way? Why is this
Oh,
happening?
100%. Mhm.
That will push me and that's what has pushed me to make healthier decisions on the regular. What is the first step? Like what do we do? How do we start?
Absolutely. So I would say the first step is looking at your week. And like I said, I'm going to say this a million times in this recording is setting yourself up for success. So look at your week. You guys have maybe 3 on 4, whatever it may be. Look at your week and point out the busier days, point out the days that you have space to say, okay, I'm going to do my grocery shop and my meal prep here, and I'm going to meal prep for these days and start reasonable with yourself. I would say start by meal prepping maybe for 3 days, and maybe that's the 3 days that you have work this week. Say, okay, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I'm going to meal prep this week. And then, start from the top, make a plan, look at your breakfast and say, let's just pick one, pick one to start. And then looking at your lunch and dinner. And we'll get more into like actually how to do that. But really, where to start is looking at your week, picking out busy days versus not busy days. And I would say, like I said, starting with maybe 3 days of meal prep and then going top to bottom. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe an assortment of 2 to 3 healthy snacks that you're going to have to put in your bag and bring with you to work that week. And when I say lunch and dinner, it doesn't, and what we're going to talk about is like, it doesn't have to be these elaborate recipes with a ton of ingredients. It's as simple as, you guys know your macros, right? Carbs, protein, healthy fats. It's a puzzle that you can take things out, plug things in, and really make it simple where it's not going to feel like a burden.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming. I know that that was a
Mhm.
struggle that I had, at times during, our initial meeting. I'm like, "Yeah, this is exciting." And then you
Right.
do hit like a roadblock and it's like, whoa, this is a little bit too much. And
Mhm.
from working with you, there are recipes that you have shared with me that one is like it's my go-to, like I eat it all the time and people at work notice I eat it all the time, but it takes me
Yeah.
literally like 20 minutes to make. And then there's
Yeah.
other things that are a little bit more elaborate that I enjoy eating, but I know I don't have either the time to meal prep that
Mhm.
meal, but or the energy or like just the mindset, like if I'm
Absolutely.
just like not feeling it. So it is okay to just have very simple, like, recipes or just ingredients, knowing what is important to have at
Yeah.
every meal and then just going with it.
Absolutely. And I would say, like, where do I start to add to that is like looking at your week, but also saying to yourself, what do I like to eat? Like you said, right? What do I like to
Mhm.
eat? So take note of those things. Like, what do you like for breakfast? What do you like for lunch? What do you like for dinner? What do you like to snack on? What flavor profiles do you like? Like, take note of that. And then from there, picking out your meals for 3 days of the week will be much more enjoyable and simple. Don't
Yeah.
feel like you have to force yourself to eat something you don't like?
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
because what's my I hate yogurt, and you're always like, "Oh, yogurt. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, you hate yogurt."
Yes, I'm always
Yeah.
like "This one doesn't like yogurt. Cottage cheese? Nope. Hard-boiled eggs? No."
Yeah. Yeah, so you don't have to eat things you don't like. There's always something like an alternative
Absolutely.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are like the key components that you would say you should have included in your meals?
Yes. So I always say if you can remember these 5 things when you're building your meals, you're gonna make a balanced meal every single time, and this is how you can make meal prep super simple for the week. So even if you wanted to, like, make a list, make the list once for yourself and keep it, but 5 components starting with the protein. So when you're looking at your week, usually protein is the thing that's gonna take the longest to cook. You don't usually always have protein on hand, right? It's not a
Mhm.
pantry staple. So thinking about your protein first and kind of planning that out for the week. So I would start with protein, and then going to your complex carbs for the week. I usually pick like 1 to 2. So talking about complex carbs, your potatoes, your rice, quinoa, some form of Ezekiel bread. We are big Ezekiel bread people, love Ezekiel bread. Any maybe some whole wheat wraps, any tortillas, whole grain crackers, those kinds of things. So then after that, that would be number 2, and then number 3, your fruits and veggies. So that's the one of maybe the most important components, because that's going to fill up the rest of your plate, right? So at
Mhm.
breakfast, maybe it's all
Yeah.
your fruits, and then veggies, the ones that you cook all at one time and really make a dish, make a protein and a carb different, right? So that's how
Yeah.
you can add variety. Um, and obviously your fiber and your micronutrients, vitamins, all of that. And then number 4, healthy fats. So important for our bodies, especially for our brains, right? Omega 3s working in our brain, all of our anti inflammatories, things like that. So healthy fats, super important, avocado. And like I said, all of these things, pick what you like avocado, olive oil, um, your seeds, some cheeses, peanut butter, almond butter. Component number 5 is the fun stuff. What are you going to put on your bowl to make it different from the week before, right? So your sriracha, your soy sauce, um, even like some hummus, salsa, things like that that you can take a dish, your protein, your
Yeah.
carb, and your veggie, and the next week, you could do the same thing, add a different topping, and you have a different dish. So, say if you could remember those 5 things, your protein, your carb, your veg, healthy fat, and a fun little topping to give it a little twist, um, you can make a balanced meal every single time, and it's not, a 20 ingredient recipe. So,
Right.
that's definitely
Right.
my meal prep hack right there.
I love that. It does make it really simple, and I like that the last thing is to make it fun. But you're right. Like there, just I'm thinking about like all these things that you taught me early on that like
Yeah.
I didn't know that you taught me because I'm just like, oh look how smart I am. But I cook like
You
my
are smart.
biggest thing is like thanks. I cook ground chicken, but then I'm like, oh, I
Right.
want to maybe make it like an Asian flair or like a
Right.
Mexican style. And you have the same exact ingredients, but you switch up the toppings and it make
Right.
and then you have a different flavor profile. So it can be simple. And I didn't
Exactly.
realize that is you just it's now like ingrained in me.
Yes.
And yeah, and
Yes.
it has helped so much.
Yes. And it's also when you do it this way, it's easier when you get to the part that kind of maybe not frustrates a lot of people, but it's where it's challenging is actually, preparing said 5 components, but when you do it this way, it is a lot easier to, make things in bulk for 3 days, make
Mhm.
veggies in bulk,
Yeah.
make your complex carbs in bulk. It kind of streamlines your cooking process, which like I said tends to be the most maybe one of the more challenging parts of it, I would say.
Meal prepping is time consuming. If you think about, oh, it's easy, I'll just fry this up and cook it. But there's other components to that. You have to,
Yeah.
put it away, do the dishes, prep the
Yes.
veggies. So it does take some time. So I think it's important to set aside that time, like you said. Look at your week, prep for the week. Okay, I'm working, let's say Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday this week. I will cook all my food for the week. And I'll pick, if it's going to be Tuesday, I'll try to go grocery shopping Sunday and then cook Monday. I try not to
Right.
overwhelm myself that I have to do all of these things, in the same day. And,
Exactly.
if you set your mind to it, I get it done within 2 hours, and then I'm done. And it makes it so easy for the days to come with work because 'cause
Yeah.
we're working 12 hours. We're gone like, for me, I leave at 6:30 and I get back between 8 and 8:30 at night. So,
Right.
the last thing I wanna do after work is cook or even have to put something together. So,
Exactly.
yeah, so
And
putting
I
in that time and effort in the beginning really pays off.
Mhm. Absolutely. And like you said, it takes 2 hours of your time, and I think if I could say one thing to motivate people to do this, think about the 2 hours that you take on your Sunday or your Monday for the over 48 hours or 72 hours that you guys are working in a week to make it so much simpler for you. Like decision fatigue, it is real. You do not want to decide what you want to eat, but if you took 2 hours a day before and you prepped it, that's one less decision that you have to make.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. It all pays off.
For sure.
So when I'm making my shopping list, what does a very simple like if I'm meal prepping for those 3 days,
Mhm.
like what would you suggest?
Absolutely. So going in that same order of the components, I would definitely start with your protein, and kind of thinking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you said this week maybe eggs are gonna be my main source. So maybe eggs and then 2 other proteins that you could do for lunch and dinner. So I would say, okay, this week I think I wanna have eggs, and then I'm gonna get some salmon and ground beef. So simple. So I know those are going to be my proteins for the week. And then, you always have maybe some protein powders on hand. Those can be like your extras that you think about later. But from there, then, working into your complex carbs, making sure you have. So pick 1 to 2. Maybe it's potatoes and quinoa or rice and sweet potatoes or whatever it may be, or maybe it's a sweet
Yeah.
potato and a chickpea pasta. So picking your complex carbs for the week. So these are like all your puzzle pieces. So I would say 1 to 2 in the protein area, um, 1 to 2 in the complex carb area. Picking your fruits and non-starchy veggies I would go to next. Three fruits, or sorry, two fruits, three veggies. So your fruits are really good for your snacks and your breakfast. So say you say apples and blueberries, perfect. And then you move to your veg and you say broccoli, peppers, zucchini. You just pick what you like, and when then
Yeah.
you can put it together later. Um, and then always having some healthy fats on hand. So olive oil for cooking with or to drizzle over something as your healthy fat source, avocados, peanut butter for a good snack, flax seeds, any sort of cheese you can add on top, those kinds of things. So I would go from top to bottom, picking one to two from each category, and then you have all your puzzle pieces, and then you can rearrange and put them together when you get back. And but also keep in your mind, like the veggies, you can cook all that stuff at the same time. So you say, I want broccoli, peppers, zucchini. When you go home, you're going to cut all that up and you're going to throw it in the oven. And picking things that, go together and overlap. So maybe some of the same veggies kind of cross between lunch and dinner. But if you've picked three, you have options in how you put them together.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about, the meal prepping, and sometimes that can feel a little overwhelming in the beginning. How
Mhm.
long is this gonna take me? Is this food going to, like, be enough to get me
Right.
through my day? So, was, like, a tip you can have for that? Like, if someone's worried, "Well, what if this food I'm prepping isn't going to get me through the day?"
Every time you go to the store, definitely do an inventory check first of your pantry staples. Because, not every time we go to the store, we're buying the shelf stable items that we always
Mhm.
have on hand. So I would definitely look there because that's where you can kind of get creative on a day that you're like, shoot, I ran out of lunch, I ran out for dinner, or you can put something together. So take inventory and make sure you have those pantry staples on hand. So personally, for me, things that I like to have on hand in case I run out are, frozen vegetables. Those are going to stay in your freezer all the time. You can always
Yeah,
whip those up super quick. I love to have a couple boxes of the chickpea protein pasta.
yeah,
I can grab one. I can add a chicken sausage on top, something that can also be frozen. That's another great frozen staple. So taking inventory and making sure you have those things that you can buy, but you might not have to cook that week. So frozen
right.
veggies, chickpea
That's
pasta,
a
even
good tip.
having some rice on hand. Yeah,
Mhm.
or canned tuna, having that on hand, you can always whip that up into a meal, a sandwich, a little lettuce cup. So definitely taking inventory and making sure you have pantry staples that you don't feel pressure. If I bought it this week, I have to make it. They can sit in the freezer and you can grab it and you can make a super quick meal.
Yeah.
Um, that's one of my favorite. If I'm running out, those three things I will make for dinner every single time. A chickpea pasta, a frozen chicken sausage. I love them from Trader Joe's, and a frozen veggie. And
Yeah,
there, I got
super
everything
easy.
ready to go.
Yeah, that's super easy, and,
Yeah,
something else that we had talked about in our meetings is, like, practice on your days off. Like, before
absolutely.
you start this and prepare this for what you're gonna consume in that day, I think people worry, "What if I'm still hungry?" The last thing you wanna be at work is hungry.
Yes.
So, practice, see how it makes you feel on a day off, versus working.
Yes, exactly. I remember I told you to do that in the beginning, and I think you did, to see, how that food sits in your body, right? How does it make you
Mhm.
feel? You're like, oh, I didn't like this meal, and especially for you guys that you're up and you're moving and you're working, you also want the food to sit well and you want to feel good. So I definitely think, if you're new to it, take a day if you can and practice. See how long it takes you to prep. See how the food feels in your body. How long it takes you to grocery shop, and then you can give it a little trial run. But I think something I hadn't mentioned yet is the power of a high protein snack in making sure that you
Yeah.
don't get too hungry during the day. Um, so those high protein snacks are so important to also when you're making your shopping list, make sure that you have on hand. And um, I think we'll go into what examples of those
Yeah.
are, but a high protein snack can be a lifesaver.
Yes. I mean, it does. Like, I have I think it's the same snack every day. So we keep talking about before we get into it. So like, let's get into it. Let's just talk about,
Mhm.
what a simple meal plan for a nurse on her 12-hour shift may look like.
Depending on the person, and what time you're going to work, I love a simple protein shake on the way to work in the car. That is super simple. It'll right there take you maybe 5 minutes to blend up, and then you can have something to sip on. You get nutrition in your body right in the beginning of the day, get your metabolism kicking in. So I make my protein shake super simple. I love, a protein powder, banana, Greek yogurt or any fruit in there, maybe some spinach for a vegetable, and flax seeds. Or you can even go way simpler and just do, your banana, your almond milk, and your protein powder. Kind of like a breakfast snack to wake up the body so you're not going into work on an empty stomach. Because
Right.
it also starts from the beginning of the day. So when you skip that meal or that snack earlier in the day, it'll catch up to you later. So I think a protein shake, something really simple, is a great thing to get some nutrition in the body right from the get go. And then breakfast and overnight oats, I think, especially for nurses, is a great option to have. It's full of complex carbs and fiber that will keep you feeling fuller for longer, kind of slow down that digestion, and kind of hold you over until the next meal.
Mhm.
And they're also super easy to prep, throwing everything in a jar and kind of shaking it up and throwing it in the fridge. Say if you were prepping for 3 days, maybe you could make one big one in a container and divide it up, or you can put them in 3 little jars and you're ready to go. But always my simple overnight oats recipe would be, depending on your ratios, but oats, almond milk, Greek yogurt for some extra protein, blueberries, sweetener of choice, maple syrup, honey, chia seeds, and then you could also throw a little bit of protein powder in there if you wanted to get in some extra protein. Uh, a serving of this usually has about 25 grams of protein with a little bit of the protein powder in there, the Greek yogurt. So that is something that kind of ticks all your boxes and is super easy to make, doesn't take any cooking, heating up. You could even throw it in the microwave if you like it warm at work, but that would definitely be a suggestion of mine
I
for
like that. I
nurses.
need to try that one actually.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
just so simple to make. If I know I have a crazy day, this is one of my go-tos for sure. Another option, if you had more time to meal prep, I love, a healthy breakfast sandwich. This is actually also really easy to make in bulk. If you make your eggs, I love the Dave's Killer English muffins. Those are really great. Um, or the Ezekiel brand makes a gluten-free if you need a gluten-free option. Mixing some whole eggs with egg whites. It's one of my favorite breakfast hacks, increase volume, increase protein. So I would love to do an English muffin, an egg mixed with some egg whites, a slice of cheese, and then some Canadian bacon. Canadian bacon is also a great breakfast hack. High proteins, actually low sodium, low on the fats that we don't really want, and it's a really great alternative to some
Yeah.
other, breakfast meats out there. Pairing that with some fruit that you grab a kiwi, grab a banana, and you're good to go there. So that's something that you could, make 3 of them, prep it, wrap them up, put them in the fridge. Another one that I love.
And I think that breakfast for nurses, especially and if newer nurses out there listening, I was one of those and I would skip breakfast. And I learned
Mhm.
quickly that that is not sustainable on a 12-hour shift.
Yep.
You have to eat breakfast and picking high protein, which we're talking about so much, but that just makes it last longer. It gives you the energy, and it's something that if you're not doing it, try it. These are two very simple, easy go-to recipes to try and see how that changes how you're feeling throughout the day. Because I do think a good breakfast on to start out your shift is key.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Um, Another option, if you're like I say, like new nurses out there and they're like, I can't make 3 meals, make breakfast simple. You could also grab a hard boiled egg or two and a yogurt and some fruit and granola. Like if you just have all those things on hand, and you just kind of put them together next to each other in your fridge, you could grab them that morning and you can head out the door, making it simple. And like I said before, thinking of the foods that you like. So that's another one that's really easy to just grab.
Yeah, and then, I think with these recipes, and we haven't even gotten to lunch yet, but I know that we're gonna at the end we'll talk about where we can actually find the details of how to prepare these recipes. So if you're listening, don't get worried that you have to be writing this down or go back and listen, because we'll make sure that Sydney's been so sweet to have all of these sample recipes available to the listeners. So take what we're saying, and then know that we'll send you in the right direction to get the details of these at the end of this episode. So we
Absolutely.
made it through breakfast. What does like a lunch, dinner, snacks, like what does that kind of look like?
Mhm, definitely. Lunch can really be kind of similar to dinner with building around your protein and your carb and your veggie. So if you picked your 2 proteins, 2 complex carbs, and a handful of veggies for the week, you could create 2 meals out of that, making one protein one of your lunches and the other one your dinner, adding your fun toppings, and you have 2 meals ready to go. So that is always a go-to. Um, I like to call that, like that's like the 3-part method that can work for a lunch or a dinner. I will share one of my favorite lunch recipes that I will batch make for the week, and for one person, it'll last me like 4 to 5 servings. And like I said, in the recipes I share, you'll see that reflected of how you can make this in bulk and divide it up into 4 or 5. But a chickpea, it's my Mediterranean salad with chickpeas and then your choice of protein on top. So you would cook
Yeah.
your quinoa, you would cook your chickpeas and then chop up any veggies you like, keeping it simple, right? If you're not, you don't want to chop all this stuff, pick 2 things to put in there. Um, my recipe that I have, like I said, it's a more of a Mediterranean style. So it's got tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, bell pepper. So put all those raw veggies in there. Take your cooked quinoa, dump a can of chickpeas in there. Simple dressing, olive oil, lemon juice, salt, pepper, and you can, doctor that up as much as you want, but it's as simple as that, and mixing it all together, and with the, um, measurements that I have in my recipe, this will last you definitely 4 to 5 days, and
Nice.
then you throw your protein on top. It already has some great protein in there, so it's actually a great vegetarian option if you are vegetarian without the protein, and then maybe with a dairy-free, feta cheese on top or just nix the feta. So that's a great vegetarian, but to add your protein on top, for those who are not, getting, a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store,
Oh
one of my
yeah.
favorite things to do, and then you have your salad made, you have your rotisserie chicken, and you can even beforehand divide that into your containers, or on the day of, you put it into your container and top with your
Yeah.
chicken. You could also throw a can of tuna on top, or if you had leftover protein from dinner, so you had leftover ground beef, you had leftover steak, you could throw that on top. So this one is super easy to make. The only time-consuming thing there would be boiling the quinoa, but, um, that's that's the only thing, and once you get it down once,
Yeah.
like I said, you'll
It
be
gets
able to do
easier.
it. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of my go-tos. I say I make that quite often, and it's easy to, like I said, also sub out the veggies, put in some other ones, and you have a whole new kind of flavor profile there.
Right. And I love that. And that's like the foundation, just building those and switching it up, and it just makes life so much easier.
Absolutely.
And, for dinner, I'm, like, looking we, like, talked about this, and I'm looking at your dinner go-to, and I had just have to plug this before you say it. I eat this. This is my go-to. I can make this in 20 minutes, and I eat it probably at least 3 weeks out of the month because it's
Yeah.
so good. So, definitely at the end, go check this recipe out because it's life-changing.
Yes. Yes. It's really funny because I share this recipe with, I would say, all of my clients, probably 10 out of 10 of them. I share this recipe with. It's something that my mom used to make for my brother and I when we were in school because it was so easy and it was something that
Mhm.
we could grab and reheat. And growing up as a kid, I ate this meal so much. So it actually comes from my mom, and I shout her out because it was healthy,
Yes.
it was high protein, and I now, these years later, take it with me to every single person I meet with. But it's an Asian lettuce cup, basically. So all it is ground chicken, and you could sub that out for your favorite ground turkey, ground beef. So you cook that up just with nothing. Pull it off the stove, and then you add your toppings on. You add your mix-ins. So we add soy sauce, sriracha, rice vinegar, and then, season it as you like, and then scallions, cilantro, and then the secret ingredient is water chestnuts. They're amazing. It looks like a can of tuna, and it would be where you find like the soy sauces and the seaweeds in that kind of Asian section of the grocery store. They'll be right there, like near the wasabi and all of that. And throw a can of those in there, and that's it. That is the meat mixture. So you can eyeball that sriracha, soy sauce, vinegar, throw it all in, mix it around, and then you can serve that any which way you like. Um, a lot of the time to make it a more hearty plate for maybe a dinner,
Mhm.
or maybe for like a late afternoon if you're a night nurse, something that make it more hearty. I would put it over rice and maybe add some lettuce on the side. Or maybe as a lighter lunch or even a snack, if you had some left over, you could get some lettuce boats and actually make little lettuce wraps.
Yeah.
Or like I said, deconstructed in a bowl. But that one is really, really simple. When
Oh,
I'm in
good.
a rush, I make that.
Because it literally does not take much time at all. It's super,
No.
super, super easy, and it's so delicious. Like, I never thought that I could make something that would taste that good, and literally someone said to me yesterday, they're like, "Ann, you have your rice and chicken thing again," and I was like, "Every day,
Rice and
every
chicken
day."
thing.
Yeah.
That's so
It's
funny.
great. And then what I think is really important, and you had talked about this earlier, is the like snacks because
Mm.
we're
Mhm.
not like I'm not telling you when I say, oh, avoid the break room snacks. I'm not saying to ever avoid the snacks, but having like we need snacks throughout the day on a 12-hour shift. It's
100%.
necessary. So, what are some good options for those healthy snacks?
Yeah. No, snacks get a bad rep, but snacks can honestly be one of the most amazing tools for even people on a weight loss journey, or just people trying to stay fueled throughout the day. But I would always say make sure my number one, tip for healthy snacking is making sure that it's definitely a protein and a carb are present. Just a carb as a snack will run through your body really quickly. You'll have some energy probably for a shorter amount of time and then maybe get hungry in an hour or two. Uh, Anchoring that carb down with a protein really slows down the digestion and will keep you fuller for way longer. So, if you're thinking of two things that you like, always making sure your carb is matched with a protein. But just to throw out some of my favorites, the Baby Bell cheeses, I live on those. I love those.
Same.
Meat sticks, there's a ton out there. If you're not a meat stick person, you'll find your favorite. There's a lot of different ones. There's beef options, pork options, turkey options, chicken options. So play around with that. Hard
Yes.
boiled eggs, raw veggies with those single serving hummus cups, super easy to grab. A simple tuna salad with on a rice cake or some crackers. I love deli turkey roll ups. It's such an easy, quick form of just pure protein. If you're a salty snack kind of person, I do love popcorn and dry roasted edamame beans are so delicious. Yeah,
Yeah.
they come in little single serving packets. You can get them on Amazon, get like a 20 pack. And that's something to just throw in your bag. It has like 11 grams of protein per single serving. So that's a great one. If you're a chip person, also, some of my
Yes.
favorite brands, I love popcorners and pop chips if you're really craving that chip. That kind of gives me that salty crunch. I also love your good old peanut butter and apple, kind of getting the carb from the apple, some protein from the peanut butter. Peanut butter and dates, similar option. And a Greek yogurt with granola. Like I said, an easy thing to grab for breakfast, also as a snack.
Okay. Yeah.
Cottage cheese as a snack with some crackers, cottage cheese with apples. And then last one is one of my favorites. I like to make an apple dip. So I'll mix some Greek yogurt, with a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon, and then a hint of peanut butter, mix it all together, and I just dip my apples in it.
Oh,
Again, high
nice.
protein, crunchy apple, gives you that kind of fresh, crunchy craving there, and super, super delicious.
You
So
haven't
I
shared
have
that one
these.
with me, so yeah, I need
Yeah,
to I need to get the details of that one.
yeah, when I was writing it, I was like, "I don't think I told her about this one."
No, you
But yeah,
didn't.
I kinda forgot about it, but it is a tried and true, really good
Yeah.
one.
Well, it's good. And we before we wrap this up, I do want to talk about the difference between, day shift nursing and night shift nursing. I know from
Absolutely.
personal experience, like I don't prefer night shift, but I do have to work it sometimes, and I struggle to eat on night shift. So, during
100%.
the day you can think about breakfast, lunch, dinner, but on nights you kind of your body doesn't really work the same as it does during
100%.
the day. So,
Yeah.
what is like a good like tip you could give for maybe the night shift nurses listening that are struggling with their eating habits?
Yeah, definitely. I have 2 really good tips, I think, for night nurses.
Okay.
One thing would be to shift your thinking from meals to maybe 6 high protein snacks. So all of those high protein snacks that I just mentioned, you can kind
Mhm.
of pair, 1 to 3 of them together, and you will get a sort of meal per se, a meal saying that it's got your carbs as your protein and your healthy fats, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming as, like, it's 3 in the morning and I'm, eating a taco bowl or something like
Yeah.
that. So, um, you know, picking 2 or 3 of your favorite high protein snacks from that list, or if you have your other ones, and having like 6 mini snacks throughout the day. So I put 6 together, like, as an example. You could do, like, your meat stick and your cheese and some crackers as your, like, charcuterie plate. Then maybe you have a rice cake with peanut butter and banana. Then you move to maybe some hard-boiled eggs and hummus and crackers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you can finish with some dates and maybe a couple dark chocolate chips. So having those snacks instead of really 3 big meals can be maybe something easier to stomach when it's, in those wee
Right.
hours of the night and you're getting hungry. Um, Another one is to have protein powders on hand. Sometimes our bodies, it's easier to sip on something, or even if like you're working and you need to get some nutrition in, easier to sip on something than it is to, force yourself to eat something, like I
Right.
said, like right in the middle of the night. So having some protein powders on hand that you can mix up with some almond milk, mix up with some water, shake it up, and then maybe you grab a piece of fruit to eat on the side. Something that could be a little bit more attainable to have at those hours.
Yeah, and then also, I don't personally, like, I wouldn't wanna eat something super heavy at 3 in the morning, but, having one of those, dinner options, or, lunch options, but eating that, like, on your first break at work, and that'll kinda
Yeah.
set you up as, like, that breakfast, but, maybe you like breakfast, maybe you eat breakfast or the on night shift, but if you wanted to
Yeah.
have that bigger meal, maybe put that towards the beginning of your shift and then having those snack options to get you through the rest of the night.
100%. I would definitely say start with your meal right at the beginning of your shift to get you that first leg in, and then you have those high protein snacks on hand, and you can kinda munch on those, throughout the night when you get hungry.
Yeah. What are some is wrapping this up, what are the biggest, like, tips and takeaways? I've said, how do you say no to the break room snacks?
Right.
Is it 100% no, like, all the time?
Right.
Like, what is some advice you could give for those?
Inside and outside the break room, this happens. We are human, and I think the number one thing is to give yourself some grace. We crave our sweets, we want that, and I think 100% denial is just not realistic. Restriction
Mhm.
backfires, and that's why I like to approach my clients with reframing that mindset of I can't have this to how can I incorporate this? One rule that I've shared with many people, and not to restrict but to practice mindful eating, more of a mindful eating strategy, is the 3-bite rule. So after 3 nice, really good bites, those are your taste bites, right? And then after that, it's kind of more of a consumption. So that really helps with mindful eating. Why do I want the cake or the cookie? It's because it tastes delicious, of course. So mindfully, chew that cookie, mindfully enjoy that chocolate. Like, it sits in your mouth and it's so delicious and you're enjoying it so much. And then if you mindfully you connect that to it, after 3 bites, maybe you can step away and you're okay. So that's a really good mindful eating tip that I like to share, and
I
just
love
saying
that.
that, yeah,
Yeah,
restriction,
that's a great
100%.
tip. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is because if you think about it, I crave gummies, that's, like, my big thing,
Right.
but I'll just sit there and eat them, and then I'm like, "What am I doing? I feel like crap." So,
Mhm.
if you just need to have, like, 1 and, chew it, take 3, that's a really good thing to think about because it's not
Yeah.
gonna nourish you, you're just satisfying those taste buds at
Exactly.
that point. Yeah,
And
I
3
like that.
bites are not gonna kill you.
Yeah.
From a dietitian, I promise. 3 bites, you'll be okay.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that stress and burden away from those donuts and cake that the families and patients bring us.
You're welcome. Yeah. And if you're fueled throughout the day, you'll feel like 3 bites and you got your fix. When you have
Yeah.
those high protein snacks leading up to it, you have your meals, you won't feel that ravenous craving.
And then, tips for meal prep. We've talked about this, making it fun. Don't make it seem like it's work. Like for me, I put on my iPad and I watch my Bravo shows. That's how, you know, or
Yes.
listen to this podcast as you're as you're meal prepping. And then you had shared some other things like with containers or like, just making it as fun as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, make it fun. Turn on your favorite playlist, podcast, TV, pour yourself a fun little drink, pour yourself a poppy, you know, the Diet Coke every once in a while here and there. I'm okay with it. And don't overthink it. Have fun with it. Buy a fun lunchbox that you're excited to bring to work. Get it with your initials on it. Get some fun containers. Get little, bento boxes. Those are the big trendy thing here these days. So just get something that makes you excited. Go to Target, get your tools, and just really be easy on yourself because whatever you see on social media, I like to remind people of that too. Like it, just meet yourself where you're at because I'm
Yeah.
sure if you start doing something differently, it's going to be 1% better than what you were doing before.
Yes. I love that. Don't feel like you have to do it all right in the beginning. Take those little steps, and that can help if you're feeling stuck, or like that struggle like we talked about where to start. But like if you're really feeling stuck, what is like the number one piece of advice you could give to someone?
If you're feeling stuck, reach out to people. I know I would always, if I get an Instagram message, an email, anything like that, don't be afraid to reach out to people. They're willing to give you more than you think, right? Watch YouTube videos. Like don't take to social media with a grain of salt, but scroll through for just inspiration, for ideas, and just don't overthink it. Trying meal prepping for the first part is the hardest part. It's probably the most daunting part, but once you make that first grocery list, once you make that first week of meals, these things are reusable. And it just kind of takes pushing yourself to get over that hump and allowing yourself to say, it doesn't have to be perfect. And simplicity is key.
Yes. Yes, I love that. So the long awaited, how do we get these recipes from you, Sydney? How are you going to share this with the listeners? Please tell us the way to find these recipes.
You can follow me on Instagram. My name is Sydney Navarro, and my Instagram is strongly_SydNav, the first and last part, first name, last name. It'll be on my Instagram story highlights. As a highlight, I'll have all of these recipes that we mentioned on there. If you'd like a PDF document of them or maybe even more explanation, feel free to shoot me a DM. I can send you the document right away. And if you have any other questions, definitely feel free to send me a message. I will 100% answer. And going beyond that, if you are interested in working with me one-on-one, you can definitely also shoot me a message. And I take clients one-on-one currently. So if you're interested in that, we can explore that together as well.
Perfect. I highly recommend it. You have helped me tremendously. And this is the number one reason I wanted to make this episode because I think nutrition is overlooked in the nursing field. And I think we need to start taking care of ourselves a little bit better so we can help others and pay it forward with the things we learn to our patients, to our colleagues, and just making us overall healthy. And if for some reason you missed Sydney's Instagram or you're struggling to find it, you can always go to this podcast Instagram, which is at AMN Nurse, and we will make sure to tag you in this episode and they can go from there to find these recipes. So thank you, Sydney, so much. You were so
Yes,
detailed in everything, and I think that
you're welcome.
this is going to help so many people. So thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Nursing Uncharted. You can learn more about this episode and our show on our website at amnhealthcare.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find show updates and Nursing Uncharted opportunities on our Instagram at AMN Allied. Special thanks to AMN Healthcare for making this show possible. See you next time.